Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to our weekday video posts, where we've started to look at what's called the three Buddhist personality types, greed, hatred, and delusion, and how for most people, although of course all three arise in the mind, there is one where there's a little bit deeper groove in it. The mind tends to go to that one a bit more. And you can access a post on Monday for more information on that. Today, I'd like to kind of continue with this theme, but particularly looking at this, just the very nature of the conditioned responses in the mind. So one way that I talked about how to notice or get a sense of what Buddhist personality type you are is when life pushes you kind of past your edge, when really difficult situations come up and it's just, you're finding it hard to deal with and you kind of can't, literally. What does one do? Look and see, what do you do? And how that is a very, it's very telling in terms of which of those three, greed, hatred, or delusion, tend to dominate the mind. Because what happens is, as human beings, when we are overwhelmed, we just slip into, or without mindfulness, we slip into what our habitual coping mechanisms are. And we're really, without mindfulness, we're really not in control. We'll just slip into whichever one tends to be the most well-worn. And of course, it's situationally dependent as well. We don't always just slip into the same one, but there is one that is kind of our go-to. And so starting to understand this, not so much as a personal thing. This is what I want to talk a little bit about right now. You know, the teachings talk about how we have this, it's called delusion or ignorance. We're ignorant of the fact that we aren't really what we think we are. Without looking more closely at life, we think we are these independent beings that are totally in charge of what we do, what we say, what we think, and just really can just pull the levers and switches and do this or that, or not do this or that at will. And when we start looking more closely, we see that that's actually not the case. While we do have agency, we're not just completely at the mercy of whatever. We do have agency, and of course that rests upon the ability to be mindful. So we do have agency in what we say, think, and do. We aren't completely in control at any given moment what we say, think, and do. And when the conditions are right for one of our habitual coping mechanisms to come up, to arise, i.e. when life gets really difficult, it will come up. And it will come up because the conditions were supportive for it to. And this, of course, is part of how all things manifest in this realm, in this universe. When the conditions are supportive for them to, they arise. Our sun, the kind of the genesis of all life on this planet, right? The energy. That sun came into being because the conditions were supportive for it to. I don't know what they all were, but the gases coalesced and had a sun. Our earth came into existence because the conditions were supportive for it to. Our atmosphere, every single life form, every thought, every emotion, every coping strategy comes into existence when the conditions are supportive for it to. Think about it. When you're cruising along in your life and everything is just fine, easy, not so difficult, your coping mechanisms they're not up. They're not showing themselves. You're not kind of leaning on them. Why? Because the conditions aren't supportive for them to. And so starting to see, our Buddhist personality types, but mostly how it actually happens that we end up going into these grooves. It's not so personal, actually. It's just lawful. It's called dependent arising. And it is true for everything that manifests in this universe. So, yes, we want to be aware of our coping mechanisms because, frankly, many of them aren't so helpful. So we want to be mindful of them and start to mitigate, the unwholesome effects that they might have. But that they happen in any given moment, we don't have to take such personal responsibility for. Why is this important? This what I'm about to say is important, because if we start to take personal responsibility for these coping mechanisms, for these different manifestations of greed, hatred, and delusion that we try to lean on to get support when things are really difficult, then we end up giving ourselves a hard time. See, there you go again, right? That inner critic. Oh, this is rocket fuel for the inner critic. Stop doing that. Look what you're doing. You're eating again. Oh, look, you got into another relationship again. Oh, what's wrong with you, etc. Right? If that's the case, then we're not going to want to look at these. Why would we want to get close to anything that we're going to give ourselves a hard time about? We'll just no, I just don't even want to deal. I don't want to look at this arena in my life because it's so painful, because I give myself such a hard time about it. But if we can drop the giving ourselves a hard time about it based on clear seeing that this is not personal, this is just lawful, this is just nature following its nature, it's the Dharma unfolding, then perhaps, maybe I will want to engage in this arena a bit more because I'm not beating myself up. There's not that painfulness. We might call the second arrow in the teachings that comes along with it. So it's very important and helpful to see these coping strategies for what they are so that we can have a chance to work with them. When there's so much judgment involved with it, it just muddies the water and we can't see clearly. So yes, we have a specific Buddhist personality type of leaning more towards greed or hatred or delusion, especially when things are difficult, but we don't have to take such personal responsibility for it. We want to be mindful of it, absolutely. We want to learn how to mitigate those kind of, what in psychology would say, those maladaptive tendencies, right? So we don't suffer. But to think that we just have total control and can just kind of turn a switch on or off at any given moment, that's just not clear seeing. That's just not what's true. And of course, one of the ways we can both develop the mindfulness to be present with all of this, but also the steadiness of mind so that we can see clearly, so that we can see the nature of things and that they're not personal, of course, is the formal practice. So let's go ahead and do some together. Settling into your posture that you're meditating in with maybe a little deeper breath or two. Nice, slow, calming out breath. Letting the body settle, soften, widen, or open. And this naturally draws the attention to the body. Start to make a somatic connection with the body. At first, feeling the body wherever we might feel it, perhaps where it's touching something. Then as the body relaxes, the attention can also kind of relax with it. The body softens and opens. The attention can soften and open and move from feeling the body just where the touch points are to feeling the whole body. Maybe what we feel shifts from the initial impressions of hardness and softness or pressure to more kind of refined sensations of tingling or vibration. And we can start to experience the body more as a field of sensations rather than a discrete form. Connecting with this field of sensations that includes the sensations of breath. The body and the breath are felt as one thing, which they are. And as the attention rests with this experience of the breath body, this somatic experience, mindfulness is being cultivated. For every moment that we are present with this experience, mindfulness is being cultivated. Steadiness of mind is being cultivated. We're present and we are aware of what's happening. In this case, we feel it. We feel the breath body. This steadiness of mind and this knowing of what's happening, even for a moment. Don't worry about all the times the mind wanders. It will, also based on conditions, like everything else. And it will come back based on conditions. Not to give that any attention, any energy. This steadiness of mind and this knowing, this clear seeing of how things are in the moment is the foundation and the basis for the whole entire path. Everything to be known about suffering and the causes of suffering and happiness and the causes of happiness come from this ability to be present. So when you're meditating and the thought arises, which can quite frequently and for many people, why am I doing this? What does this paying attention to the breath have to do with anything? Well, reflect on the fact that you're actually working on enlightenment itself. You're developing the conditions that are supportive for freeing the heart and mind. Such a kind thing to do for oneself, to give oneself the time to do the formal practice. And so I would encourage you to continue to explore during the day, during your daily life, especially when things are difficult. What is arising in the heart and mind? Do we lean towards finding comfort from what's difficult through, pleasant experiences? Do we lean towards finding, some resolution or some relief from what's hard by making it wrong, attacking it? Or do we tend to kind of space out, get fuzzy as a way to distance ourselves from what's difficult? If you pay attention, it will become clear. And of course, over time, you'll notice all three. And very, very common, there is one that is, just more well-worn, more of a go-to. And once you know that, then you can kind of be on the lookout for it because it tends to come up more. So very interesting place of exploration in our practice. Okay, I wish you well with that and a good day, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.